2026 is the year of automated businesses. 2026 is 1 year that businesses are going to make the most amount of money without doing the most amount of work. So in the years before now, we are used to businesses always doing, work as do the hard work so that you can make more money. But in 2026, your business has the potential to make so much more money without so much hard work. And it even gets better because your business can do so much money without having so much overhead count. So that means that what your take home becomes higher, because if you're not paying so many people to work, that means you can actually take home so much more money. Right? So I do not know why a lot of businesses are not already keying into this. I do not know why a lot of businesses do not see the need to already automate processes in their business so that they can save account, save costs, and even the cost of having someone running that thing manually, save that cost and then invest it back into the business for more ops, so that way it can produce more money, right? So I feel like the problem with a lot of businesses is that they don't know what to automate. Nobody's telling them, okay, this is how you can get started with automation. Everybody's just trying to sell them, they are already, built automations or templates, which most times does not fit into your existing business. Let's be honest, a lot of the automation templates that you're going to get are going to be things that do not fit into your already existing business. You need something custom for you, for how your business already works, because there is no need for you to change the way your business works just so you can automate, because that just cuts off from the main thing that automation is about. Automation is about saving time, taking up what you're already doing manually and automating it. So if I have to leave what I'm doing manually and the way I run manually to adapt to a new form in automation, I feel like it defeats the purpose. So this video is basically just a walkthrough of how any business owner can get started with automation, and you do not need to hire me to do this for you. You can get started yourself building these automations by yourself. So this I would call the business automation masterclass, and this is basically like a strategic framework of how you can map out your processes, pick out the right tool for your business, and reclaim at least 10 hours of your daily, or weekly input into your business. So let's just get started. So you might need a pen, like I have one. You might need a paper just so you will jot things down, and because I'm going to be talking a lot from head, so hopefully it doesn't get so bad because I ramble a lot, during the course. So the first thing is obviously going to be your audit. The first thing that you have to do as a business owner, if you are getting started with automation, is to audit your business. And what are you auditing for? You are auditing, is your business ready for automation? How do I get started with automation? That is what the audit is about. So the first thing that you want to do is your tax ready for automation? Your processes in your business, are they ready for automation? Because you're going to have different automations for different processes. There is no one automation that you can build that will do all the processes in your business. It doesn't work like that. You have to have different tasks. Each individual task has to be automated on its own, right? So the first thing that you want to do is look at all the tasks that you do in your business. When I come in, I speak to this, I arrange a meeting with this, I talk to that. All those individual tasks that you do, look at each of them and ask yourself which of them is ready for automation. And how do you tell if it's ready for automation? So it's if it meets the rule. Sorry, if it meets the rule of three. I like to call it the rule of three. What are the rule of three? Number one, it is repetitive. There is no need for you to automate something that is not repetitive. Yes, if your task is not repetitive, there is no need to automate it. Because imagine if I'm doing something once, like different once, and that's it. Why do I need to automate that? It's pointless, it's useless. I'm never going to do that task again. So there is no need for me to automate it. But something that I have to come in every day and do, every 2 minutes I'm doing, every 3 minutes I'm doing. Yes, I have to automate that one. Because that every time I go in to do that, I lose 2 minutes. Every time I go in to do that, I lose 2 minutes. Every time I go into do, at the end of the day, if you calculate that 2 minutes by 24 every day, or you calculate it by what I have in a week, you will see that I have lost at least 3 hours in a week doing just going back to do that task. So now I should automate that because I need to get back that 3 hours that I spent doing that task. Number two rule in our rule of three is that the task is entirely rule based and it does not need any human logic. That's why personally to me, when it comes to sales calls, sales negotiations, you don't automate that because there is human logic that has to be coming, so that has to be put in, and there are nuances to it. So if someone says, "Oh, I don't think there has to be a human that will actually, be able to counter that and be able to close the sales." But things that are, rule based, like we wake up in the morning, we send a summary a summary of what we did from our tasks into our chat, or we go into our we go into our tax manager and create tax for us. Those are rule based. I have a tax. What's my tax? My tax is get on a call with this person, and so I want to create that task on what's it called, my task manager, ClickUp, Notion, whatever. That's rule based. I don't like. I can easily tell someone to do it. Do you understand? I can easily tell someone to do it. It's rule based. What's the rule? This is my task created on Notion. This is my task created on ClickUp. That's rule based. There is no human logic needed. There is no nuances to it. It's just this is the task created. There is really no, so that one can be automated. So imagine if I have to go in every day to create tasks, and now I just have the task I need to create it. I can automate it because first it's repetitive, and now I don't need a human logic for it. So it's entirely rule based. What's the rule? This is a task created. Right, so that is the number two thing that will tell you if your task is ready to be automated. Then number three is that of course it occurs every day or weekly inside your business. So that is another one as the first one, which is it occurs every day, which is the same thing that I say. You are doing it every day. It's repetitive. You're doing it every day, and it's happening inside your business every day. You are doing it every day. So those are the rule of three. So once it means that rule of three, you can go ahead and automate it. If they don't meet the rule of three, do not automate it. That's why I don't automate sales calls, don't automate all those conversations that have to, involve human, that also include human logic, human nuances. There is no need to automate those ones. But the repetitive tasks that you do every day, every week in your business, you should automate those ones, and they are logic based, rule based, sorry, and they are rule based. Automate those ones, right? So the next thing that you want to do is avoid premature automation. So what is premature automation? Building so many complex apps or building so many complex scenarios for a product that you haven't even sold like 10 times manually is like a waste of capital. Like a process, or even the same thing, and the same applies to processes. Like I said, if you have like two sales, or sorry, you have a call, or say you want to, I did see someone talk about it one time, said a company contracted him to build as a, what's it called, an AI voice bot that schedules calls and qualified leads for them. And he asked the question, how many calls are you receiving at the moment? And they said two. There is really no need to build an automation for two calls per day. There is no need. It's a waste of capital because you're going to be paying for those tools and everything. Is a waste of capital, and you already have someone there. So let the person just answer the two calls. So you see, do not prematurely automate your task. If your task is not, I want to use the word massive enough, there is no need. Like in this case, I'm saying 10 times. At least if they were getting like 10 calls per day, maybe, although to me, if they were getting at least 10 calls per day, maybe they should automate that. But two calls, there is no need to automate that. There's no need to build a voice bot or build any automations around two calls. It's waste of capital. Just keep the processes manual until the exact pattern of the execution bores you completely, like I have written here. So all the processes should be manual. So especially if you're starting your business, there are some things that you should manually do until you are sure that you are bored, and I want to use the word bored, or maybe you are overwhelmed. There are so many of these calls coming in, you are overwhelmed. Yeah, you can go ahead and automate that. So it is important that when you're doing your audit, you make sure that you avoid premature automation. Something is not big enough to automate, leave it be. So number two, we are going to go into the bottleneck, what businesses already are going through. So in your team, at least you will spend like 5 hours a week on data transfer, moving files, copy this, like I said, create task, and this is my task, so I'm doing today, create it for me on my ClickUp. That's time that you're losing for uploads into the drive, and mapping it, and organizing it in the drive, and then client report. If you have a client that has to send reports, you have to follow up on them. Oh, you have not sent reports today, and all of that. So at least if you are doing that yourself or your team, if you are doing all of this, you would see that you would spend at least 5 hours doing all of these things. So I think I'm going to be in a different outfit today because I was not able to complete the video for yesterday. So I had to, complete it today. So excuse me if I'm wearing a different outfit. So one thing that I always tell businesses is that the biggest bottleneck is almost like 80% of work that they do is a waste. Like, because if you think about it, most of the businesses are drowning in admin work, copying files, uploading a client's documents, reporting clients, copy and pasting information. Those are the things that a lot of businesses are drowning in, and that is 80% of the work, right? And they turn that to be 80% of the work because those kind of work is actually important to keep the business running. They have to be able to say which information is being stored where. They have to be able to tell where is this, how to report to their clients, of course. So all these, right, is if not automated, or if not on a system, actually occupies 80% of the work that the business will end up doing, when in reality those kind of things should be like 20% of the the work that is actually done in the office. But when there is no system to handle this, you begin to see that there is a lot of traction, and there is like too much work is being wasted, too much work is done, but a lot of the work is a waste, right? So, and the funny thing is that all this work is silently draining the margin that should go into sales growth and all of that. Because of course, if you imagine that someone comes in the morning, copies files, uploads documents, reports to clients, does all of that, and from maybe resumption time is 9 a.m., someone works on that from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., right? That's already how many hours lost. So the person only has like from 1 p.m. to what, 5 or 4, to actually do something that's going to bring the business growth, which to me, I feel like that first time, or the first hour, is actually a waste. Because in a business setting, all the main goal should be at sales growth, or everything should be targeted at the margin to grow sales, right? So now let's move over to the mapping phase. How do you map out your workflows so that you can integrate them into so that you can build a very functional workflow for your business, build a functional system for your business? So the first thing that you want to do is what I call the paper first rule. So the paper first rule says that if you cannot sketch the workflow on paper using standard boxes and arrows, you cannot automate it. And honestly, think about it. If a particular process, you cannot draw it out on paper and be like, okay, this one comes down to this, and this one comes down to this, and when we do this, it comes down to this, and then we do it comes down to this. If you cannot draw it out like that, it means you can't build an automation around it, right? It means that the process is scattered, and you have to think, we work that process first. So go back and be like, no, let's stop doing it like this, let's do it like this instead, so that way it will be in a structured way. So when the when the task is now in a structured way, it's easier for you to draw it out on paper. Say something like what is the word I'm looking for? Okay, maybe let's say file upload, right? So what happens, it could be when a file is dropped or a client's document is dropped in our email, right? We go in and we copy it and we download it and upload it to our say file database, wherever our database is, and then we maybe notify someone to go and review it. If it's something that needs review, then we go maybe on Slack and notify someone to review it. See how that is very structured? So now if I'm going to automate it, it's easier for me to say, okay, once an email comes in with this type of file, upload it to the drive and notify someone. Because I can draw it out, and it's easier for me to automate. So make sure you always follow the paper first rule. Make sure that you draw it out on paper. If you cannot draw it out on paper, you can use tools like Whimsical. I use that to draw out the mappings. Then before you can now go into your system or your tool, your software, and start building that automation. The number two thing that you have to map out is your input and your output gate. Like I already said, when in the first example, when your email comes in, right, that is your input. That is what we call your trigger. So your trigger is is like trigger in English, right? It's something that forces something to happen, right? That's the same way in automation. Trigger is something that starts the system, something that once it happens, the system starts running. So you have to establish what your trigger is. And like in the example that I already gave, your trigger is when an email comes in with this particular document. That is your trigger, right? So you make sure that you establish the input data. Like I said, the input data now is that particular document. That's the input data. So you are going to have the structure on how what the document usually looks like, and how it is maybe named, the nomenclature of it, so that way, that's how you're going to be able to identify that input. So you make sure that you establish that right from the on-go, and be like, okay, once a client sends you documents, it is always called client's name, or whatever. So that now is your input. And then what's the trigger? When that kind of document with that kind of name drops into our email, that's a trigger. It starts running the system. Always make sure that you establish clear trigger gates and precise destination points for every step, right? So every step, like I already explained in the first one, the destination should be stated. Like I already said, in your paper first rule, these are things that you should have been able to map out. So when my input comes in, this is where it goes to, this is the destination it goes to. Once it gets to that destination, this is where else it goes to, or this is where else, this is the next thing that happens, and all of that. So make sure that your inputs are established, your outputs are established, your triggers and your destination, everything is established, and you are good to go before you even go into the software and start building the system. The next one is to identify exceptions, right? So map out what happens when variables fail or data arrive formatted incorrectly. Like I said, if the structure of the client's data or the client, the what's it called, document that the client sends to you, right? If you tell the client to always follow this nomenclature, like always call it your name docs or your whatever they call it, right? Establish what happens if the client sends it in and it does not fit into that kind of nomenclature. It does not, the person maybe did not remember or something. So establish what happens or what are the alternatives, right? You can give it different alternative if it looks like this or like this or like this, so that it can go through any of that looks like it. And also maybe you can add an error handler that if it does not fit into that, notify someone so that someone can go and look at that. But all these are just scenarios that you have to think about, because most times there's always going to be an exception to the rules that you're establishing, right? Because like I said, sometimes the client might forget that that's what you did tell them, or sometimes they just, something will happen. So you have to make sure that in this, what you are drawing on your paper, there is room for exception. So what happens if this person or what is happening does not fit into the rule? What is to happen, right? So make sure that you establish that as well. So these are like the three things that you have to consider when you're mapping out your workflows. So the next thing is your SOP to code metrics. How do you get started? So the first one, of course, is to have your SOP, right? And how do you get that? The first one is to make sure that you have your documents, right? Record your screen executing the task end to end with zero editing or omission of simple tasks. And then the number two is logic maps. So transfer raw recordings into Grips linear rules using sequential if then logical paths. And the third one is to automate, translate the completed into robust stable API calls within your builders, right? What does this basically mean? It's just like a breakdown of what we said previously, but in this time in actual action points. So if you're not sure of how a task actually happens, you can ask your team member or whoever is in charge of that to record their screen executing that task, right? So once they record their screen executing that task, you can turn that screen recording to a linear rules. And there are so many softwares that you can use to do that, right? Off the top of my head, I cannot remember what this one is called, but you can check something that will turn your SOP to linear, right? Because what that now does is that it gives you the paper first rule, because now it has given you linear rules and how the step by step how this works. If this one happens, this what happens. So it now gives you that, and when you now have that, you can now actually go in and build automation in your system. So what we are going to look at right now is automation priority metrics. What are the things that you have to prioritize and what are the things that you have to deprioritize, especially if you are just getting started with automating your business. So for the first one is going to be the complexity, right? So you are going to prioritize things that are low complexity and high impact. So this could be things like lead routing, invoice reminders, calendar sync. So it's good to start with these ones. These ones are like your quick wins, things that you can easily just get your hands around. So anything low complexity, if you're just starting out, and high impact, like I just said, start with those ones. And the next one that you want to do is the second type of group, which is the high complexity and high impact as well, which is going to be your Q2. So this is just me saying what are the things that you can automate. Like I said, priority. Q1 is your quick wins, what you should automate immediately, right? Then Q2 is the things that are high complexity but are also high impact, like your business really, really needs it. So that's what you want to focus on when you get to Q2 of your business. And this might not necessarily be quarter one and quarter two. It can just be, okay, you are done doing what is in Q1, go over to what's in Q2, right? So these are like high complexity things like full client onboarding, because now, I mean, you know how to do, you have done invoice reminders, you have done lead routing. So now you can go a step further and build something a little bit complex, like the full client onboarding, the multi-app database things, all those kind of things. Now you can do that, but because these ones now are high impact, they're going to really impact your business, even though they're a little bit complex. So you can, dive into this one in Q2 after you're done with Q1. So these ones are like strategic projects. So the next thing that you can also go into is like the Q3, which are your distractions. They are high impact, but in this case they're also high complexity. So you can try to get your hands on this one, and this could be like more complex design integration, infinite condition branches where you're branching if else, if this one comes back here, and then yes or no, like there can be a lot of conditional branching happening, and you can also try your hands on those ones for your business. And the last one, which is the one with low complexity but low impact as well. This can be like formatting internal logs, simple formatting cleanups, which, like you can see, is low impact. It really doesn't impact your business as much, right? So you can just keep that one for later. But of course, it's also important that you have to get it done, or if you can, while you are doing either Q1 or Q2, you can add it as well, because you need it. You need a lot of your data that maybe goes into your database during the multi-app database sync, or during the lead routing or calendar sync. You might want your data to be formatted cleanly or properly and such. So if you have the time, I don't know if I want to say the time, but you might want to also consider like things like this simple formatting, cleanups, and all of that, putting it into what you're already doing to build it, instead of waiting till like Q4, till like your phase 4 to be able to set that up. I really hope that makes sense. The next one is your tech stack. How do you find your core apps, your connectors, your interaction apps, and everything? How do you choose which apps to stick to? So let's look at it. The first kind of apps that you want to look at are your core apps. What are your core apps here? Your critical storage centers where raw data resides. So there can be several things for this. You can use your project management or your internal database, your CRM. There are so many other ones, but these are just the ones listed here. And of course, every business already has these kind of things, right? So what, depending on what you're currently using in your business, you can always choose that to be, okay, I'm going to continue using this even in my, there's really no need to try to migrate when you're trying to build automation. Stick to what you already have. So of course you already have a CRM. If your business does not have an internal database, you should have to consider getting one eventually, even when you're starting out, because as your business scales, you want to be able to have all the data of your business right from its inception, right? So having a database right from day one is really good for your business. The second one that you want to consider your tech stack is the connectors. What are you using to connect these apps together? So you connect Slack, you connect CRM, you connect, what are you going to use to connect all of this? And there are actually so many out there, but because for maybe flexibility, and as a beginner, someone that is just starting out with automation, you might also consider integration engines like Zapier or make, right? Those are the two that are really, I want to say, efficient for businesses and okay for small businesses, right? When you begin to go for things like anything and all of those, it might be a little bit complex, and you need to have some sort of background knowledge to be able to get those ones working as good as you want to. But for starters, you can start with Zapier or Make, and a good thing is that you can even as time goes on, you can even migrate safely into anything and all of that, and your data and your flows will still be okay. You just have to send data from Zapier to anything, right? So these connectors will translate and pipe data safely between and completely separate software environments. Sorry. So like I said already, it's going to send data from your Slack to your Drive, from your Drive to your Zoom or wherever, right? It's going to safely help you send and transmit data between software environments. So the last one now is your interaction hub, sorry, which is communications, right? So where your communication layers are, you have to decide, are we going to do Slack? Are we going to do SMS? Are we going to do email? Depending on what you're trying to do. If you're doing email, what email tool are we using? If you're doing SMS, what SMS tool are we using? If you're doing Slack or whatever, you just have to be, also decide your interaction hubs here. What are we going to use to interact with teams or clients during this, in the whole phase of the, setup, right? So the last one will also be like, how do you choose these tools? So I just wrote down, like I already stated a few. So I just thought to complete it here. I'm just going to walk you through some of the best ones that I found on in the market as of right now when I'm making this video. So for low code builders, right, at automation level, the low code builders, you can try something like Zapier and Make, right? They help you to do multi-app syncing, file routing, and all of that. And the skill level is actually beginner to medium. Like I already said, if you are going for things like Make and all those enterprise level automation tools, those ones will be more expensive and also high, like the skill level will be way higher, right? And for relational database, you can use Airtable or Notion. So I'm guessing that most businesses already use either of these. So you can use this, and this can be like the where all your records, business records stay. And of course, the skill to this can be medium, because I'm expecting that your team is already using something like this. And the last one will be like custom AI integration. So you also have to understand that most of the systems, or most of the systems that you're going to build are going to want custom are going to need AI integrations. So for AI integrations, you can use OpenAI if you're trying to get summary, all those kind of clean formatted data, right? You can use OpenAI or Claude, but if you're trying to get maybe news or things like that, things that are, search the web, right? You might want to consider using something like Perplexity, right? So OpenAI will help you with data parsing and content analysis. And the skill level here is maybe a little bit advanced because you have to know how to prompt, you have to know how to get your API and all of that, which is a video that I think I've made about in my channel. You can just check them out, or I will link it in the comments. And the last one is, of course, the native integrations. Like if you already have like a SaaS product that is outside the scope of what make or Zapier or what your automation tool allows, so you have to make sure that you have to have another way of using code to actually integrate them, maybe using webhook or all of that, which most times for this you might not really need. But let's say you need this, you might have to get like a developer to help you integrate, do the connection. But aside that, I think for a start you might not really need like native integrations. You might be okay with the integrations that already exist, right? Because I feel like a lot of the connections that already exist or integrations that already exist in some of these tools are like our day-to-day tools that we're already using: Airtable, Spreadsheet, Notion, Slack. All those things are already existing, so you might not really need native integration at the start, so you might just ignore that. But if you were to ever need native integration, just know that that one will be much more advanced, and you will need a developer to help you with the integration. So let's look at databases and spreadsheets and which one you should use when you're trying to build your system. So first one is spreadsheets. So spreadsheets are good, they're easy to integrate. You just have to click one or two things and you are good to go. But the thing is that a lot of the times it tends to break as your data scales in a spreadsheet. Your system might break, right? The flat files lead to accidental edits and then slow automation lookup. So when the system is looking up the automation, most time when the system is looking through the spreadsheet when it's running, most times it can result in lookup errors, and then there is zero reference relations. So when you already know the spreadsheet, you can't really relate one table to the other, or one row to the other in the next table. You really can't do that. You can only relate tables. You can't really do a lot of that. So in automation, you might need some of that as well, which is something that you might not really get. And also, using spreadsheets as your central database eventually results in data fragmentation and silent flow crashes. So if you are trying to build your business, of course nobody uses spreadsheets as their source of truth or as their source of CRM, as their central CRM. Yes, spreadsheet can hold some data here and there, but when you're looking for a functional CRM, of course spreadsheet is not the way to go. But now, on the other hand, let's look at something like a relational database, something like Airtable and the rest. They ensure data integrity, because you can link one record to the other. There is a lot that you can do using tools like Airtable, and they provide structured file types. So there are different kinds of field types. Sorry, so that different kinds of field types from single set, like they give you a lot of ranges and a lot of flexibility for your data, which is a good thing. And they also allow you to scale via robust API keys. Yes. Things like Airtable, they give you API access that you can use to um, create clean webhooks and separate raw data from visual front end layout. So there is a lot that you can do with database, right? Which is why you should consider using database in your automation and not spreadsheet, especially your automation that has to do with clients' data and all of that. So now let's look at the common pitfalls that your automation might fall into so that you can avoid it. The first one is the overbuilt or rigid system. So building complex multi-step, multi-branch pathways for young services that are likely to change their cost structures next month, which is one thing that I see a lot of people do. You don't try to build everything about a business in one sitting, especially if the business is still new, because your procedures are still evolving. So just automate them as you go, not automate everything and then walk away, right? That's why even the idea of automate and leave it is very vague to me, because automation is like cooking food. You don't have to sit with the food, but you have to come back and check that food every day. It's not every day, from time to time, right? You have to come back and check that meal from time to time. Yes, so that's how I see automation. Automation is something that you don't sit with, but you have to come back and check it from time to time to be sure that it's okay. And that's the main point I'm trying to make here. Automation is it's not something you try to build all at once, right? Build some things more. Okay, you see them manually doing this, build out that one and let them use it, right? As we evolve, you see another thing that they are doing and you be like, okay, let's let's automate this one, you automate that one, and we move on. Like, let's automate as we go. Let's not try to automate all the processes right now when we are not even sure about what we are doing in the business. Let's try to, let's automate what we can do now as we work, and then as we evolve, we'll make the changes and all of that, right? Another thing will be ignoring silent failures. So do not forget to add notification rules like automated Slack ping, SMS when integration models fail to process correctly. And that's the point that I made when I was talking about the flow, the exceptions as well. When I was talking about the exceptions, when you're mapping out your flow, you have to always make sure that you integrate notifications, so that when the system does not run as expected, it will notify you. It's called an error handler. That's what it's called. So make sure that you always have an error handler that notifies you or the team when something has gone wrong in the system. That's why it's also good that you check the system from time to time, so that you can point out something that went wrong that you probably did not know. But the more flexible or better way to do it is to add your error handler, so that whenever it happens, you'll be notified. The next one is API overload or bloat. So running too many single step apps concurrently. Aim to keep actions consolidated inside a single stable engine, right? So when you are running so many single steps, you're running, and that is why, to me, even though some of these apps that you have give you room for automation, I feel like it's always better to have all of your automation running in one single engine than having set up Slack automation inside Slack. If Slack happens to, and then even Airtable gives you room for automation, but set up automation inside Airtable, set up another automation inside this. When you have all of them running independently like that, it becomes a problem. So that's why we say, okay, use one engine, put everything there, let them run there, so that way you can monitor everything from one central dashboard or one central point, and then be able to tell what broke, what is not working, and all of that. The next one is, like I already said, the setup and forget fallacy. Automations are digital machinery that requires ongoing maintenance. So you have to always make sure that you come back, update it, check workflows that broke, check why they did, all those kind of things. Make sure that you check, oh, did this one run this morning? Why didn't it run? Was there no input? All those kind of things. You have to make sure that you always check it and be sure that it's working as expected. And the next one is the infinite loop. When you keep on making this one interact with this one, and this one interacts with this one again. You know how infinite something is. This one goes here, this one goes here, and then we just keep going like that, right? So when you set up a process where maybe app A triggers app B, and then app B immediately triggers app A back, all those kind of things are just simple errors that a lot of people tend to make, and you can avoid if you have the paper first rule, where you draw out everything, because by then you would see, why does this one have to trigger this one back. You can be able to point out, because obviously that consumes your tags or your operations, or your credits, right? And that, of course, is a waste of time. The last one is hard coding variables. So what does this mean? You know that whenever if you're trying to pick up variables for something, it should be a variable like with braces, and not an hard coded variable. What does that mean? So if I am trying to send an email, right, and I want the first name to be a variable, right, I'm going to do I and then first name, and I'm mapping it from somewhere else, right? That's going to be the variable, of course. But now if I say hi comfort, that is me not making it a variable. Now I'm hard coding that variable. So now at the end of the day, if I end up setting up that system, it will never pick up. Even if I try to tag the first name, it will never pick up the first name in that place, because I have already written comfort there, and comfort is not a variable. So you always have to make sure that you keep variables dynamic and don't try to hard code any variables, right? And that is something that I forgot because sometimes when you're trying to send an email and you're trying to test the system and you really don't have the data of the step that probably gives you the name, you don't have data there, you're going to write a name there just so the email will look better when it drops in your inbox. What ends up happening most of the time is that I usually forget to go back and change that into a variable and map it to where the data is supposed to come from. So that's something that you should always avoid as well, because you don't want all your clients or whoever you're sending the messages to seeing that and knowing that, oh, this is an automated something. I don't want it, right? So, what is the real impact of automation? Right? Let's really talk about it. A typical team loses roughly 20 to 30% of its weekly productivity to basic repetitive tasks. So, if you are using automation, there is high possibility that you're going to be saving your company 10 hours pay employee, and I mean 10 hours per employee, not 10 hours in the entire company, 10 hours per employee, because every employee does not spend time copying data, does not spend time routing onboarding forms, does not spend time generating status spreadsheets. Like they don't have spend time doing all of that, because like yesterday I spent time preparing this spreadsheet, right? Because of course I wanted to do that manually, because I had some things that I wanted to put in here. So, and it took me like almost like 4 or 5 hours. So imagine I had a system, and this was something that I used to do every day. But then, and of course, like I did said, the first rule of want to know what to automate is that it is a repetitive task. This for me is not a repetitive task. I just did this once. I might not do it again in a long time. So there is no need for me to automate this. But say this was a thing I used to do every day and I automated this. That 3 4 hours that I used preparing this would go into something else. So if you now say 4 hours every day of me not preparing this, by the end of the week, you already know how many hours I have saved by just automating that process. So that's what we mean that businesses are able to unlock scale and growth, of course, because if I'm able to save those 4 hours every day, I can now put it into doing something more sales, that affects our sales with, like reaching out to a client, building connections with clients, and all of those kind of things. This is a typical diagram of what you get when you run a manual system versus when you run an automated system. So a traditional system takes you 25 minutes to work. A semi-automated system that has a human in the loop, because that human has to go in and verify it, might get the task done in 4 minutes, and then a fully automated system might get the task done in 0.5 minutes. So if you are trying to get started in automation, this is a 30-day launch plan on how you can get started. Your first week is to execute the readiness audit. Track all your hours spent on manual work and write down all the tasks that you have been doing that you want to automate. Write down sending message to clients, sending email, responding to this. Write them down that week one, right? And then week two, you want to draft your visual workflow map on paper. Like I said, your paper face rule. So draw all of them. Okay, the first one, I want you, responding to or emails or checking in on emails. You can now draw out how you want out that process. You are currently doing it and how you want to automate it, right? The next step is to build a minimal viable automation using a simple step engine. So now you have mapped, you have know what you want to automate, and you have mapped it out. The next thing is to actually go in and start building this. And if you're just starting out, it's always advised to start small. So start with maybe a three-step a three-step what's it called, three-step automation. This happens, this happens, this happens, right? Build that, and as you will continue to evolve, you get the hang of the engine, and you can now begin to evolve and have bigger ones, right? So once you are done with building that system in week 3, in week 4, you run your error test and make sure that every credential is secure and everything, and then you can deploy it into your business. So that is a wrap for us today, and that's where we're going to call it a day. If you have any questions around automating your business, you can let me know in the comments. I know that this, like I said, was a masterclass on how to get started in automating your business. I really hope that this gave you the motivation to want to automate processes in your business. If it did, you can stick around in my channel. I have so many automation tutorials for different and very basic tasks that you can automate in your business. So you can just stick around and check through all of them. And I really hope you found this useful. If you have any business owner that was contemplating on whether to automate tasks or whether not, you can send this video to them, because I think that this is going to be the masterclass that they need to actually get started with automating their business. So I really hope you found this useful. I will be seeing you in my next one.